Welcome to the first. You have a story. If you look back on your life, you've done things for the first time that no one in your family, in your town, in the country has done. This is Dr. Sandi. You have unknowingly paved the way for others without knowing it or even acknowledging it. This is where you tell your story so that those who come after you can walk in your footsteps to build their own firsts. Hey everybody, meet Tanisha Butler. Tanisha grew up very sheltered even while living in a tough neighborhood in Monroe, Louisiana. This social worker gives hope and inspiration to others in their lives so that they can become the best version of themselves. Tanisha is the first in her family to become a cheerleader, to graduate from college. She got Bachelors and Masters degrees. She planned her pregnancies. She never moved back home after college, and she planned to get and remain married. Because Tanisha did this, she shifted the culture in her entire family. Let us welcome Tanisha Butler. But today I'm speaking with Tanisha Butler. Now let me hear about your story, Tanisha. What is it that you're doing now? That's the first, and I've already read something amazing. So tell us.
The first right now I would have to say is homeschooling. I am a new homeschool mom and we just started in December 2021.
God
Our,
bless you.
thank you. Our two older boys, ages 10 and 11. We saw the need. It was something God has been preparing me for about 4 years. It had been on my mind. I saw the need for it with our children and just with things that I saw in the school system. And they all children have different needs, and the school is not, I would say, not able to train and teach each child according to their needs, meaning learning styles. Everyone has different
Correct.
learning styles, and particularly with our two older ones, their learning style is so outside of the box. And through the years, we've been trying to help them fit inside the box. I was a really good student. I was on a roll mostly. And typically when that's you, that's what you look for in your children. And when
Yes.
that wasn't happening, I thought, wait a minute, what's going on? And I sat back and really watched just how much it started with our oldest, just how much this kid was trying. And he just continued to struggle with it. We had teachers who assisted and as much as possible until fourth grade. Then it went the opposite way. And for me, as much as I believe in education, however, I believe in confidence and you feeling and
Yes.
knowing and accepting who you are over anything,
Yes.
over education, over sports, over anything else. Because if you don't have that, I mean, anybody can dictate and decide where you're going to go. Because now you don't have the confidence in yourself and you follow after others, or
Correct.
whatever the teachers say you are, the F's you're getting every day, you're going to start feeling like a what F, a failure.
That is true.
Therefore, we decided to, really, God gave us the release this year. We tried several schools, several private schools, Christian private school. And at the end of the day, I was sitting in my last meeting with the school. And the Holy Spirit spoke to me and said, you continue to try to teach them how to teach your children. Teach your children. And I got the word. And since we've been loving it, we've been allowing it to happen organically. It's no pressure. It was meant to be.
Now, during COVID, did you get the idea during COVID that this was working? Like, because they were forced to stay home, did that happen with you then?
No, ma'am, not at all. I was ready to send them back to school because the teachers were learning. I understand. I try to be compassionate and thoughtful also of them. They were put in situations where they were just really thrown out there. Therefore, our children were just thrown out there with the teachers who were thrown out there to learn this new style and new way. I found myself doing so much work on the home front end, a lot of teachers I knew personally, I would reach out to them. Hey, can you help me with this? Because I couldn't really get that from the teachers. Therefore,
Right.
I couldn't wait for school to start back. I couldn't wait. That was the first year, last year, that our middle child was not on honor roll since he's been in school. The
Wow.
first year, I understand the changes, the ups and downs, but even after they returned, it was still the same struggle. I've scheduled a meeting with the school, including the principal, and we were told, well, just create a list for him, a checklist and this and that. And I'm asking, and I don't believe in putting the blame on anybody. However, both parties are in the class. Not only both parties,
Oh,
but I'm involved. I'm an active and a very involved parent. And I'm reaching out to the teacher saying, hey, I'm sorry, I wasn't aware they were having this test. I couldn't help my child study. And for them, well, he's fourth grade. We're teaching them independence. No, 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 no. I
and
know
fourth
myself.
grade is a critical year.
It is very critical. Therefore, my hands were tied behind my back, and I was having to do more work just to try to hunt work down, hunt study guides down from other teachers I knew personally. And it shouldn't have been that much work, because I hear often where the schools and the teachers will say, oh, parents don't do this, and they won't even come up to the school. They won't call. But I've also found on the other end, when you have supportive parents, not controlling at all, I
Right.
believe in giving that teacher their space, whatever they need to do. And often when we have meetings, I would usually say, how can we help? What can we do at home? It's never, well, you're not doing this in class. You're not doing, even in class, I would say, well, what are some things you think we could do to help him in this area? Even though I'm
Yeah.
not in. So I try to give them the benefit of the doubt, but I just continue to see that it was a system that was working against my children, and I couldn't bear to see them continue to go down that road. And I realized that they're not able to give them what I'm looking for.
And sometimes you have to take the reins into your own hands. I was speaking to my daughter-in-law who's working on a doctorate in learning disabilities. And she's at the point where she needs to submit her questionnaire. And her questionnaire is on double double learning. What does she call it? Double gifted, I think, or double
Mm,
certified, because she's working on learning disabilities, but the child is a gifted child who's above and beyond. So we usually think of disabilities as the opposite, right? Like
yes.
the child is not learning. But sometimes this kid is so far advanced that you can't keep up. And we don't have the tools in place for that either,
No, ma'am.
right? And I was like, my aha moment, because I've worked with the Board of Ed and I know that there are a lot of gaps. And we as parents do have to pick up the mantle whenever there's a gap. And if you're a parent that's not engaged, which my mom, to this day, God bless her. She worked 3 jobs, but she was up in school every single time, something happened or PTA. Like, I don't know how she did it, but thank God that she did, because she was able to even get me skipped. This is something that we have to be active as a parent and really go out there and take control. So I'm so glad that you did that.
Thank you.
And I see you're very into education. You have your bachelor's and your master's. Tell me about that.
I knew that was the road I wanted to go. I wanted to be educated. I wanted to be out of the hood. I would have to say that was a passion and a growing passion God has instilled in me since I was a young girl.
Education's the key.
Yes, yes. I saw where I was. I appreciate the upbringing I had. I appreciate the fact that the drug dealers that lived behind our house were kind of like my big brothers. They came to my basketball games. They looked out for me. We did well in the neighborhood
Right.
because they assisted. My mom was I was very it may seem like an oxymoron, but I was very sheltered, living in the hood.
It
I couldn't
happens.
Yes, I couldn't walk to the rec center by myself. My brother have a brother who was a year older. My brother would have to go everywhere with me. Other than that, I wasn't going. My mom didn't play that. If I had basketball practice at the rec center, my coach had to pick me up. If my brother wasn't there and couldn't walk me, and now I appreciate those things. I realize
Absolutely.
later what my mom was shielding me from in the situation we were in. And that I feel that's called doing the best she could in the situation she lived in. And she did such a great job. However, I was also that student growing up where for high school, all my elementary years, I walked to school. It was right up the street from us, of course, with my brother. But when I got to high school, I literally ran for the bus every single morning. Every single morning. The bus stop was to the left, down the sidewalk. However, he had to come in front of our house to make his route.
Uh-huh.
I would be running out of the door most mornings to catch the bus
To be
when
on a
my
track
brother was
team.
already there. He was more timely than I was. But I continued in it. I was so determined that once I got out of high school, I mean, even before I got out of high school, I had everything set up where I was going, Grambling State University. I filled out my own application. I asked my mom for her income tax papers. I went and stood in line by myself. I got my own ride. I was working 2 jobs to save money so I can have everything I needed. I mean, if I didn't, I was fearful of being stuck. I was fearful of becoming another statistic, and I refused to become that.
You put the
Out of the,
work in. You were willing
yes,
and you put the work in.
yes. Out of the three of us, my sister is the eldest. She's about 6 years older than I, and I was the first to graduate from college out of the three of us, and the only one to get my master's. But I was so determined, and I would have to honestly say there wasn't. I can't give you a person that I saw. I can't give you someone who mentored me.
Right.
There were people along the way, church that I saw, principals who loved me, teachers who cared about us, those types of things along the way. But I can't just say I have one particular
Who
person.
sat you down and really helped.
No, I made lists. I made checklists. I knew I needed to plan everything out, and I did it. Therefore, I stayed on my path, and I just put my head down until I hit the finish line. Even when it came to getting my master's degree, I knew. I said I'm not going. I learned from other people's lives to what not to do.
Yes,
Therefore, I
I
said.
see that.
Therefore, I said, I see that I know and understand that once I graduate with my bachelor's degree, if I stop and start working, that's going to be the most money I've ever made in my life. And I'm going to be comfortable with that and confident in that season.
Yes.
But how hard would it be to stop working, stop making that money, and go back to school, or even go to school while you're working? Put your head down until you hit the finish line. And that's exactly what I did. I went straight through, graduated from undergrad. I was able to go through the accelerated program for my master's, so they cut a year off. So therefore I went a summer and one full year, and then I
Right.
graduated.
It took me till I was 30, I think, or 31, somewhere around there before I got my bachelor's, right? And that's being persistent as well, like you. I was working and going to school, and I
Mhm.
would take one class at a time because that's what I could afford and that's what I could get. I would take one class at a time, and I never stopped. And I remember I got to the point where I was working during the days, I was going to school in the evenings, and all of a sudden there was this class that I had to take. It was mandatory, but they only gave it during the days.
Mm.
This is back in the dark ages when, this, uh, and I had to switch schools in order to take that class because I couldn't go forward. And that threw me into a spiral of going to different schools and losing credits when you transfer. And so that part of it was a good learning for me to share with other people about just how to get it done and not to stop, how to persevere through that. But once I got my bachelor's, I had a path and I had a way of going for my master's and then going for a doctorate. It's
Mhm.
You learn from these things that you can share from these things that are, we consider them an obstacle or a bottleneck, but it's just a learning, right? I just consider everything a learning. So, yeah, the thing that I'm fascinated with that you have is you're the first to plan your pregnancy. So tell me about that.
I was in high school. My sister had a baby, and I was his mom. If that makes any sense. I was forced to take care of him, meaning whenever she worked, if she wanted to go with her boyfriend or her friends, my mom had me to take care of him. But I'm like, I have a brother that's older than me. Why can't he watch the baby?
Yes.
I had so much compassion for the child, though, and sympathy for him. And this is once again me not seeing this before. But when I had him, I thought, I'm so sorry that your mom had you and she wasn't ready for a baby. But it's not your fault. And I'm going to help you feel wanted and loved and cared for. I never said that directly to him,
Yeah.
but it was in my mind, it was in my heart. And I felt that it wasn't fair to him that he got the bad end of the stick. So I thought, no, I'm not his mom. I'm not going to try to replace his mom, but I'm going to do the best I can to take care of this baby. And he was known all around my school. I was in basketball practice or a game and he'll be running on the floor and the other students are trying to grab him. They're watching him while I'm playing the game, and I would leave school and walk to his daycare, pick him up, bring him back to the school for my practice that I had and make sure he had food. I had to have a boyfriend who could help me, not like a gold digger sense, because
Right.
at the time the boys, it's not like they had a lot of money. However, I needed them to be able to help me in some of the things that I had. God
Right.
just blessed me to end up with those types of boyfriends. It wasn't when I started dating a guy, it wasn't, well, do you have this? Let's go through this. Let me see if he has. It just worked out that way. And they were just really loving, caring boyfriends. I remember I had one who would actually ride his bike. I would send him to the store up the street to buy formula. And I mean, and we'll put our monies together and would buy this kid formula or cereal that he needed.
Package
And
deal.
yes, so he was my baby. And a long story short, with that, I learned I was a young child then taking care of him, and I didn't want to have a child to be in that position. And I made the decision. And not only that, I'm keeping cousins' kids that aren't ready for babies because they're going to the club. those types of things. And I'm not saying moms shouldn't enjoy their lives. However, the lesson that I learned from that, do not have a baby until you're
You're
ready,
ready.
and
Yes.
understand that there's a big part of your life you will have to put on hold for a while, for a season. And from that, I learned that. And even during the summers when they ended up moving to Tennessee, they would come every summer. I would put them in sports and various other things. I didn't believe in kids being bored, and we usually do things that based on how we were. And I
Yeah.
thought, I used to be bored as a child. I used to have to sit and watch the soap operas with my aunts. I'm not going to do this to anybody else's child. So I believed in creating those opportunities and moments for the children. Therefore, my husband, when we met, he's gone through foster homes, lived on the streets, ate on the streets, all types of things when he was growing up. He had to raise foster children, whatever children that came in the home.
Wow.
We had the same mindset. Look, when we get married, we will not have children unless we are ready, when we decide to have children. So we did what we needed to do to ensure that didn't happen until we were ready for it to happen, which led us to be able to plan all three of our children.
I I think there should be a class on that in school. I
I
really
agree.
do. Not the regular, you know, what do you call it? There should be a parental planning class, not just birth control and the little stuff they
Yes.
tell us about, like in detail. And I remember watching this documentary that was being done. This was years ago, where they gave children, young teenagers, they had a baby. It's a fake baby, but it cried.
Mhm.
It,
Yes.
it was programmed. And
Yes. I think that was
so
in home ec.
it was in home or that home ec kind of class. But they
Yes.
did for an entire semester where you had to, the baby had a father. So one of the students in your class was the father. But it had parents. And it taught you, if you didn't live together, like when this kid needs formula and you get a call during the night to go to the store for the formula, how tough it is for the guy to get up, get out his bed, go buy the food, take it over to the house, like no matter what time, right? Or
Hmm.
babysitting. They had to take the baby like you did to sports, to practice. If the baby was crying on the sideline and the baby was programmed to cry at the most inopportune time.
Oh, wow.
And it really taught them, I think at the end of the experiment, 95% of the students, as they watched it over time, did not have children until they were ready.
Wow. Wow.
Because it was such a horrifying experience to really experience that, even though it wasn't your child, it was your child for the semester. You had to find a babysitter for it if you wanted to go out. Otherwise, DIFUS, at the time it was called DIFUS, show up at your door because you left the baby by itself, right? It was so programmed. I'm like, there
Right.
should be a class. This should be mandatory because what you learned, I learned it in a different way.
Hmm.
I had my little sister, and my mom was working two and three jobs.
Mm.
My brother was older than I was, so he was into sports and doing all those things. But I had my little sister who helped with homework, took to school, did all of these things. And I grew up in Brooklyn, so this was pretty typical.
Mm. Oh,
All
wow.
all my friends were doing the same thing. So I didn't think anything was so different because this was the norm to take your little sister to school or to do all these things. But it does teach you the limitations of what you're limited to. And it does define how you grow up. And it
Yeah,
defines your future thinking like it did with you, right?
most definitely.
And it defined mine too. I get
Yeah.
you. Like, I'm not having any of those little kids.
I know. I know.
So,
I know.
no,
Those
thank you
enough.
for that. No,
You're
thank you for
welcome.
that because that is not something you hear all the time. And I don't care what culture it is. Like for people to actually sit and plan their lives, including their pregnancies.
Yes.
Ah, that that
Yes,
that was a
ma'am.
gem. As I was reading, it, I'm like, oh my goodness, that is good. And to
Even
never
to the
move back,
finances.
yeah, never move back to college. Tell me about that. Move back from to home from college.
Sandy, I was so determined to leave. I saw I saw my sister leave and get married and come back and the revolving door several times, no problem. I believe it's great that people have children, adult children have those parents to fall back on if they need to, if you get out and test the waters of life and you come back if you need to. It's good to have that safety net. My brother, the same. He left several times, came back several times. Once again, for myself, I'm
Yeah,
learning. I'm learning. No, I'm not coming back. No, I'm not. No, like I said, I wanted more. And I believe it's also the venturer that God has just placed on the inside of me, a part of who I am. I, I need big. I need more. I need better. Not to say, definitely not to be confident in where you are and appreciative of where you are. However, not necessarily asking the question of why, but the question is why not?
right.
Can I have it? I can. I can do this.
Now, did you see, you said you didn't really so much as have a mentor. Did you see other people that you said, that person never went back home? Or so and so, why can't I do this? Did you ever look at anyone else to say, that's a good role model for you?
Um, I would say as far as basing the majority of my decisions off of thinking of that person, I would say no. However, I think it's typical and natural for us to even, for our minds to try to find that person. One person I can think of in particular is a cousin, a first cousin, my mom's sister's son. I heard the stories. I mean, I knew him. I mean, I know him.
Yeah.
However, he was so much older than I. He's the first that I could think of that I would actually say was successful in my family. And he's probably at least about 10 years, if not plus, older than I. However, we didn't grow up together. Of course, our family is very close knit. Holidays, but when he left, he left. And he went to Alabama State University and he excelled in everything he did. But I heard the stories where they said sometimes he would be in college and would be hungry and didn't have money. And he said he would just go to sleep. Just go to sleep. You wake up
Yeah.
the next morning, you won't be hungry. You're fine. You just get. He's one person that I can say that my mind has come back to over the years and throughout the process. Some where because I didn't see his story. I just kind of heard some of it,
Yeah.
but sometimes that's enough to kind of hold
Yes,
on
it
to and give
is.
you some, yes, give you some hope or some that extra oomph that you may need.
Yes,
However,
it is.
yes. So as far as with leaving, I was so determined though that I had to get out of there that I wasn't coming back. And no matter what I had to do, I called and told my mom about the cockroaches and everything in my dorm, that we didn't have hot water and she didn't come. And I thought, you know what, girl, you got to figure this thing out because
Yeah.
you can't keep living like
Yeah.
this. I went to administration and I asked, what do I need to do to get into one of those honors dorms because they look really nice.
Yeah.
And there are only two of them, two to a room. That's it. And they told me what I had to do. And that next semester, I was in an honors dorm. I qualified. I did what I needed to do. And I never left the honors dorm until I graduated. I stayed in that same room
Bravo.
until I graduated. So I made sure I didn't go back. I sold back. I visited back, but I never moved back. I was determined to leave there. And for me in that season in my life, I couldn't put it into words, but it was the mindset of where I was from.
Mindset is
Of people.
everything.
Yes. And I was not saying that I was nowhere near better than anybody there, but when I saw opportunities, I went for them. And I was just determined not to stay. Like I remember when I grew up dancing. I love dancing. That's my passion.
Yes, yes, me too.
And with that, I remember walking to school. I had a best friend that will walk with us every morning as well. However, she came from the opposite direction. But we would have to meet halfway. After my brother went to junior high and I was still in elementary, we would meet halfway and finish walking together. And I remember in second grade, it's just amazing. I know it was literally just wisdom that God has given me. And in second grade, I was excited. I told her I got my application for cheerleading and I was going to try for cheerleading. And she told me, she said, well, I don't think you would make it. And I said, well, why? Why don't you think I'll make it?
Yeah.
And she was a cheerleader. She said, well, I don't think you would be good enough for it. You would make it. I said, oh, okay. Well, I thought, well, she's on the team, so she would know.
Oh,
but then another part of me kind of thought, because I can go deep into thought. That's probably how I got to get out of stuff. And I thought, wait a minute. She's never seen me cheer. How would she know that I can't do it? And I thought, well, you know what? I don't know how to cheer right now, but that's why I would get on the cheerleading team so they can teach me how to do it.
Exactly.
And if they taught me, I knew I was a hard enough worker that I was going to go and learn whatever it was they gave me, and I would do it to the best of my ability. And then if they said no, fine, then I'm not supposed to be on. That next year in third grade, I secretly got that application. I didn't tell anybody. Now, nobody told me to do this. I didn't tell anybody that I was trying out. I went to my mom, got her to sign it. I secretly turned it in. And I tried out and I made it.
Yeah.
I made the cheerleading team, but we were cheerleaders. We were dancers. We did parades. We traveled. We did everything. And that was us not having a lot of money. However, I was able to borrow and ask, and I wasn't scared to ask. Yeah, it was embarrassing sometimes, but I wanted it. I wanted it bad enough. And I'm telling you, I never, that's what one of my contest speeches was on, shine bright like a diamond. I was put on that back row most times. But guess what? I understood as a child that my mom wasn't there in practice. My mom wasn't setting any snacks for the girls. My mom usually didn't drop me off at practice. I had to catch a ride from somebody else.
Exactly.
I understood that didn't mean those girls were better than me. It just meant that their moms were there. And they had more support in their lives.
Right.
And I didn't. Therefore, an adult was able to do that to me because it was just me and I was a child and they didn't think that I knew any better. But I decided, you know what? It doesn't matter. I know that I'm better than some of these girls, and I don't care if you put me on this back row. I'm going to be seen no matter where I am because I'm just that good.
And so sometimes, Tanisha, sometimes the people who tell us don't, they're afraid that you might outshine them, right? There's sometimes a level of jealousy in that I've encountered. And you can't let that stop you. You still have to try on your own. I did cheerleading, but only later in college, in high school. You know, I was a high school cheerleader. It's funny you said that because I was speaking to someone and we were at a conference and they asked it's a conference for women business owners, all who make over $1 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the question was asked, raise your hand, how many of you were cheerleaders? And about 90% of the room went up.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next question that was asked was, how many were Girl Scouts? And about 75% of the room raised their hand, right? But these are things that taught you leadership abilities. And we unknowingly transfer those skills that we learned there into what we do today.
Yes. Yes.
Sales. Girl Scouts teaches you sales.
Yes.
Go open the door to sell your cookies.
Yes.
Like the best skill to have if you're a business owner. Right? And you didn't call it sales. You just wanted to get a bike.
Right. Right. Right.
Outcome, the results, not thinking like, I'm going to be using this skill for life.
Yes.
Same thing with cheerleading. You walk into a room, rah, rah, rah. You can hype yourself. You can become the cheerleader to get things done. In networking sessions, you walk in and you're ready to put that
Yes. Yes. Now you're a public speaker who can vocalize really well. Have no problem with that.
from the diaphragm, right? You could yell. They could
Yes. The proper way.
Hey, podcast family. This is a first for Dr. Sandi. Tanisha Butler and I have been speaking. We've been talking up a storm. We're only halfway through our podcast. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this a 2-part series. This will be part 1, and then we'll continue our interview and our discussion with Tanisha Butler in part 2. Part 2 will take place in the next 2 weeks on the next episode of The First with Dr. Sandi. Thank you. This is Dr. Sandi. Thank you so much for sharing your journey on The First, where no 2 stories are alike, even if the circumstances are similar. Let this discussion serve as inspiration for others to show what's possible, and more importantly, to produce seconds and thirds.